SEC, Big Ten, Pac-12 alliance?
I'm really trying to understand, BJ, like what I know what we all thought it was. Like when I think of an alliance, when I think of merging, I'm thinking of being able to utilize each's resources, star power, tradition, revenue generating abilities, just the players, the coaches, the prestige, all these different things. Like how do we make sure people really understand that USC is a big brand? How do we make sure that the Penn States of the world and the Clemsons of the world, like all these big teams, and I'm thinking about the matchups, and then Big J, you get to reading the language, and you realize not only are they not talking about football, they're talking about now. Are they talking about student athlete engagement and inclusion and all these different things that's going on with students? I think that kind of stuff is great.
Yes,
but let's not confuse ourselves. I think it's great that LSU is playing UCLA for the first game of the season. But guess what? That was planned out. Penn State ain't even playing UCLA. So, and I know that they started talking about these schedules that was already put together, these games that was already put together. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, is looking even more like a genius because he's one person saying, just come over to our league and we just got to add 2 big brands. When you're talking about all these teams, you realize that these different leagues, they definitely have a different level of how they function, like top to bottom. And it kind of goes back to 2020 and how each league kind of like started their season. The only league that from start to finish, you knew what they were going to do was the SEC. The ACC kind of up in the air. Big 12, Big 10 kind of up in the air. Pac-12 kind of up in the air. So now, BJ, you trying to say, okay, who's going to be that one voice to supersede over the whole alliance? I know we got ADs, but who's going to be that AD? They don't seem to want to delegate at this point. They seem to be saying, okay, we coming together, but let's not mess up what we've already done. Let's add some student athlete engagement. Let's look good for the student athletes as far as like what they're doing. But as far as like games, man, if we in the Pac-12, we playing Pac-12 teams. We in the ACC, we playing ACC teams. It's a lot of BJ. It's a lot of I don't know, and more of this really was just an announcement. It really wasn't. It was a lot of stuff. You read a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like my child trying to get me to help her in math. This ain't how I learned it, sweetie, so you're going to have to call your teacher because I don't know what this is saying.
Ben, we'll see if we have Kevin back here with us. Kevin, we're just talking about sort of initial reactions to this alliance between the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. And for me, and there's a lot of depth here. There's a lot of kind of room for interpretation. But I think part of this is these 3 leagues collectively kind of just trying to press pause and kind of slow things down a little bit with the expansion, the playoff evolution potentially. Your thoughts on what we've seen in the last hour now?
I mean, I don't think they know what they want to do. I think, as you said, the landscape is shifting fast in college football and college athletics. And you see the SEC go out and add Oklahoma. They go out and add Texas. And obviously that deal is going to get renegotiated with the SEC, which means what? It means more dollars, more exposure on TV and things of that nature. And I think these schools are looking around saying, do you want – what do we want to do? Are we just adding teams to add teams? Do we all want to go to 16? Do we want to work together to make sure that the 3 of us, meaning the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC, can work together to make sure that we stay in our best interest? And I think that's what's potentially happening. I think the one very telling thing is that the SEC did what they did, BJ and Ben, and the ACC, Pac-12, and the Big Ten are doing their thing, and nary a mention of the Big 12 by anybody. Not like, hey, we want to make sure those remaining 8 schools are part of this. No, just like they don't even exist. Like you already know what's going to happen with them. But again, obviously, the changing landscape of college athletics, they want to, I think, work together. What does that mean? I don't even think they know. I mean, what they sent out basically was a bunch of words that didn't mean anything. Hey, we want to work together, includes future scheduling options. Well, what does that mean? Well, I mean, we'll have some contracts that are already in place, and those have got to be worked out and played out. We're not going to interfere with that. This is not to rebut the SEC and what they're doing. What are you doing? Like what is this about? I think that's what a lot of people will be sitting there going, this was a lot of pre-talk about forming an alliance and what exactly did you form? I don't think you formed anything. Sounds like you kind of came to an agreement and said, look, let's just agree to work together in issues moving forward, whether that be a playoff, whether that be conference expansion, whether that be scheduling. Let's work together for our best interests and see where that goes. That's about all I take from it, quite honestly.
Yeah, and I think some of the points you make about let's announce that we're doing something, let's form some sort of a cooperative group, kind of sums it up in that clearly college athletics is changing. And when you go back over the last 6 months, even, we've seen two of the biggest names in college sports move conferences, and apparently do so in a way that's going to result in, I guess, the Big 12 going away, and it's going to turn the SEC into the superest of super conferences. You've seen name, image, likeness, and you've seen seemingly out of nowhere the college football playoff proposal of moving to 12 teams. And I think the SEC has been front and center with a lot of this. Obviously, adding Texas and Oklahoma is a game changer that has a ripple effect throughout all of college athletics. And I think these are the three biggest leagues after the SEC, probably the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 in that order, kind of coming together saying, all right, collectively, we have some equity here, right? All of us have big institutions, high-profile programs in our footprint, but collectively, you're talking about over 40 institutions. We can make some decisions as one. And I think they're trying to, as I mentioned a moment ago, Ben, maybe come together and just say, let's slow down and take a broader look at what's happening, consider our options, and try to come to some sort of a consensus about stabilizing college sports. Now, is that realistic? Is that maintainable? Something that was very interesting from the press conference, and this has been reported by a number of sources, there apparently is no contract. So this alliance is not contractually binding. It is what I saw referred to, Ben and Kevin, on Twitter as a gentleman's agreement. So if the SEC comes calling Team X, Team Y, will there be something contractually there to prevent a move? Not as currently constituted. If the ACC and Big Ten suddenly have a disagreement, is there going to be clarity on paper as to how to resolve it? Not as currently constituted. So a lot of kind of abstract foundational pieces here that I don't think we fully, to Kevin's point, understand the extent of quite yet.
Just because somebody said that you was going to do an alliance, you didn't have to announce it right now, because you can't just say, hey, we have an alliance. What does it consist of? Hold on, let me get back to you. Let me reach out to these other commissioners, see what they want to put out. And they really put out, yes, we come together, but we're not really going to play each other. We didn't sign anything, so we can't mess up what we've already done. And I know this is about us coming. So we came together, but we kind of didn't come together. Like, we are an alliance, but we really aren't, because we haven't even. I don't even know if these commissioners spoke to each other. Like, they said, all right, they got a middleman somewhere here, Kevin. It's one person that know all three commissioners. And man, he told me it's cool. He said it's cool. It's cool. All right, we're gonna do it. What are we doing? Listen, man. He said Clemson said they want to play. They want to play USC. Nah, we ain't doing that right now. Once again, if you weren't ready, just say you're not ready. And obviously they're not ready. And obviously this is what happens when you try to throw something together. Throw something at the wall and see what sticks. This just don't look good, especially from conferences that could have definitely utilized the star power of some of these teams a lot better. Once again, it's bad enough that the NCAA ain't got no juice. Now you got three commissioners coming together that seem don't got no juice. Greg Sankey is sitting somewhere with his feet up, watching popcorn, saying, "Look at these people, man. This stuff is crazy. It is not that hard. Either we're together or we're not." I'm just saying. I mean, I probably asked those questions in the past, but I was talking to a young lady. Are we together or not? She's like, I don't know if we're together or not. You with me, I'm with you. I don't know. BJ, Kevin, Christian, this is crazy. That's why I'm happy that I root for SEC teams, because at least we kind of look like we together. Vanderbilt, do your best this season, because it don't get any better for you no matter what.
But I mean, Kevin, to your point, to Ben's point about the SEC, I mean, this is clearly a response to the SEC, right? I mean, this is clearly, yeah.
They said it wasn't, though. They said this is not a response to the SEC. We're not doing this because of what they did.
Who believes that? Nobody.
Oh my God.
No, look, I think it's one of those things where, again, they've kind of come together and say, we want to do something, but we don't know what. Hey, let's work together. All right, sounds good. What do you want to do? Let's talk about that. But we want to do it. We want to work together. We'll do it. Okay, well, what does that mean? I do think there is something to be said. I know a lot of people have talked about, well, the Pac-12, Big Ten, ACC have similar educational interests in terms of the type of schools they are and what they kind of their educational missions potentially are at a number of their schools. I'm not saying it's across the board, but they mostly wide ranging. Maybe there's something there. But again, if you're coming together for athletics, not to rebut what the SEC just did in scheduling, but you're not going to like, what are you doing? Like, I think that is the big thing. And again, I think to Ben's point, say, hey, we've agreed to work together. Well, what does that mean? Well, and as issues arise, we've kind of come together and said, look, we're going to work together to make sure that we are working in one direction. What about scheduling? Well, when opportunities allow themselves, we'll work together to provide compelling matchups for our TV partners and our our league partners, etc. That's all you had to say. But instead, he came out and was like, well, what does that mean? Well, scheduling it down the road, and we're not trying to go against the SEC. We're just trying to work together. Work together towards what? Oh, we don't know yet. We're going to talk about. I mean, that's just to me what it kind of came across as a little bit when they released the statement. Kind of, and from the time this thing was announced, if you go back and look, the initial story that broke was, hey, the SEC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 want to work together, right? You go read the initial story, and it was about 2 paragraphs of, hey, sources say they want to work together. It revolves around scheduling and that. That's been about it. Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, they're going to have a press conference. A press conference about what? Well, apparently we found out, obviously we are announcing an alliance that we already knew, but we don't really know fully what they're looking at doing. But I mean, obviously I think if they work together, if the playoff does expand, that gets reworked. Maybe you can say, hey, let's work out what's in the best interest of the 3 of us and not necessarily so the SEC gets 5 teams in every year. Maybe that's a part of it. Can you come out and publicly say that? Probably not. Anything that you're going to do against the SEC, you're not going to come out in a press conference and say, yeah, we're here to stick it to Mike Slive and the 14 teams in the SEC. And here's how we're going to do it. I don't think you're going to do that, but I definitely believe, I don't buy that for a minute, that this wasn't kind of thought up as a rebuttal to the moves that the SEC was making. And whatever they do moving forward will be that they're at least juxtaposed in a balanced position to that league moving forward in terms of dollars and their kind of impact on collegiate athletics.
Well, and this information is still coming out. A lot of it's fluid and a lot of it is kind of speculatory in terms of, like you said, Kevin, contracts, right? There were a couple of reports from the press conference saying current contracts are not going to be reworked. Well, individually, teams have non-conference games scheduled years out in advance that might prevent a Pac-12 ACC game or 2, for example, from coming to fruition. But you also have media rights deals that are already well underway contractually. The ACC's current TV deal is in place with ESPN until 2036. So if the idea is we're not going to renegotiate a collective media package until all of the current contracts expire, that's 15 years from now for the ACC. But, reading through the release, there's some very important and very meaningful, social and educational guidelines and goals in there that are important, that are good to see. In terms of the scheduling and in terms of the impact collectively the 3 leagues want to make on the playoff, I think there are a lot of unknowns and uncertainties there.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. So much to get to in terms of college football, the Braves and the Yankees last night. We got to see great baseball between the 2 hottest teams in Major League Baseball. Didn't go the Braves' way, but can they bounce back moving forward? And who's just got it rough here in 2021 when it comes to college football? We'll hit that here in hour number 1 as well. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Welcome back. It is 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you're with us here on this Tuesday. Braves and Yankees coming up a little bit later tonight. We'll have that for you here in just a little bit. But some news and notes out there as well. LSU has just announced today that they are going to require anyone attending Tiger Stadium that is 12 years of age or older to provide proof of vaccination or a negative PCR test taken within the last 72 hours. Kind of falls in line with what the Saints were doing last night with the Jaguars Monday Night Football game there in New Orleans. And the school is the first of the SEC to outline such a policy, citing the rise in COVID-19 cases and the Delta variant there as well. So that kind of news and notes, but again, falling in line with what the Saints are doing and have done there with what they were doing in Monday Night Football. So I think Georgia came out, or the AJC today, BJ was quoting folks at Georgia, citing folks at Georgia saying they will not have any of those mandates there for their home games here in the fall as of right now.
Well, and I guess you're going to see, state by state, potentially conference by conference, potentially school by school, even decisions and a number of factors, going into that, including what the area numbers, the trajectory looks like, I would assume, and obviously medical guidance. I think you have to, trust the medical experts. I mean, when we talk about COVID or, what a virus is, what a virus isn't, I mean, that's so far above my head and my pay grade. I think I, try to trust and follow the guidance of those who study it, know it, and I've spent the last, year or two just working diligently, tirelessly to try to figure this thing out. But, I think it makes sense. I think, trying to keep everybody as safe as possible. But I think you're going to see kind of a wide array of potential, entry circumstances where for some you may not have any guidance. For some it may be, hey, you have to be vaccinated or have a negative test. But I think we're going to see various decisions across the country. But I think you got to trust the medical experts here, and I think what LSU's doing makes sense.
I do believe, BJ, that you talk about conferences, you talk about different leagues, but maybe these states are going to be something that's going to be looking into things. I mean, it's no coincidence that the Saints and LSU, the two biggest brands in that state, is making sure that, look, if you're gonna come to the stadium, we don't want to be the reason why this thing, this Delta variant that we dealing with right now spreads. But I mean, college football, man, 2020 kind of prepares you for 2021. You really, really don't know what's going to happen, but they want to. Are they trying their best to get back to normal? Yes. Are they trying to make sure they do everything they can to trying to kind of put people in the best situation that are going to be at these games? Yes, but it's still going to be very, very tricky. There's not you trust in the medical experts. You're trying to do all you can, but you also trying to, Kevin, something you say all the time, man. You can ill afford to have empty stadiums 2 years in a row. I mean, who knows how big of a hit college football took last year, let alone the NFL, when you start talking about these empty stadiums. And look at how many. I remember one time, Ray Lewis said something, about the Ravens. He said, "Do you know how many people this stadium employs?" I mean, so it's a lot that goes into it. I know that everybody's trying to do all they can to try to keep people in the safest situation possible. But hey, man, this is the climate that we in, BJ and Kevin. And like I said, I mean, I wouldn't want to be making these decisions, because to say yes over here, you got to say no over here. To appease this crowd, you got to disappoint this crowd. But you're trying to do what's in best interest, because I don't want what we look forward to on Saturdays and Sundays, be the reason why you start seeing state mandates or things getting shut down. So, yeah, these are hard decisions to make, but the best you can do is say, look, if you want to come see these teams, this is what you're going to have to do. You want to come to Tiger Stadium, 12 years of age or older, you got to provide a proof of vaccination or a negative PCR test within 72 hours. That puts a lot more of a strain on these guys taking these people punching these tickets. But hey, man, everybody's responsibility has been heightened since 2020, and these stadiums and these people at these stadiums are no different.
Absolutely. And some other news and notes out there from the National Football League. Breaking news as of about an hour ago, BJ, Travis Etienne suffered a mid-foot sprain that is considered a Liz Frank injury, and that is now likely to end his season. So your rookie running back that came in with Trevor Lawrence, so much expectation there on him as well, now will not play at all seemingly here in 2021. And I know he wasn't expected to necessarily be the starter at running back, but that is a huge blow to Jacksonville offense, which, well, quite frankly, hasn't shown a whole lot in 2 preseason games.
Yeah, and you hate it for Travis. I mean, what a college career. You're talking about one of the greatest players ever. I think statistically, the games he won, the championships, this is a resume that stands out and stands alone in many respects. But, man, for him to go down in the preseason, potentially miss the entire season, you just hate it for him. Probably was not going to be the, number one back, was going to work in conjunction with James Robinson. But when you think about his big playability, when you think about his proficiency as a pass catcher, I think was brought in, Kevin and Ben, specifically to help Trevor Lawrence get comfortable. You have a guy you have a guy that you've won with, you have a guy that can make plays running and catching the football. So just a really tough headline there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You wish Travis a full recovery, but you hate to see injuries like that.
This is one thing about the NFL that a lot of players are going to have to understand. I mean, rest in peace to Floyd Reese, the general manager that drafted me, back in 2004 for the Titans. He said something to me when I played. He said, Ben, it's how do you adjust to injuries? Every great player or every good player that has any longevity, of a career, how do they adjust to injuries? And everybody's going to get injured. I don't care who you are. I mean, I know guys have had 20 surgeries in the NFL. I know guys have had 1 or 2. Travis Etienne is a guy, BJ, that was very, very, very durable with his time at Clemson. So people start saying, well, why do you give him less carries, at Clemson when you could just feature him? Well, sometimes, man, I mean, guys, he can do more with less. Went through one training camp and didn't even make it through the whole training camp, gonna miss the season. But once again, no more speedy recoveries, a safe recovery for Mr. Etienne. Football will be waiting on you, but at least you got hurt while you were a pro, aka you are still getting paid. But I want you to have a safe recovery.
Absolutely, and that's going to be tough for Travis Etienne to come back from. And again, you talk about the Jags looking for something to go in the right direction. We'll get more on the Jags last night as we go through the show, but not much offense to speak of there. I know Trevor Lawrence, BJ, at this point, I heard a discussion earlier this morning on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. Trevor Lawrence going to be the starter, but is it just dyed in the wool that Gardner Minshew is your backup the way he's played this preseason, and C.J. Beathard the way he's played this preseason? Might there be more competition there for the backup? So that to me, going to be interesting to watch the Jags next week, kind of what they do. But obviously, offensively, they have not been much to write home about.
Yeah, and for me, I think Gardner Minshew still is the backup. What he's done statistically through his, very young NFL career has been pretty impressive, especially given that he has not played on a good team. But the C.J. Beathard potential of what he can represent is why I thought him coming to Jacksonville was a sure sign that Gardner Minshew was going to be traded. Because, and I mean, Ben, you can speak to this better than me, but you normally don't have a roster with kind of 3 guys with starting ability at quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, it's interesting. The Jaguars have 2 quarterbacks who have started basically a full season, and their starter is not one of them. Trevor Lawrence, of course, has never played in a real NFL game. Well, Beathard started multiple games for San Francisco, and obviously Gardner Minshew started a whole season for the Jaguars. So you have depth at the quarterback spot. Last night was not great, for Jacksonville, especially for the first team offense. I thought Trevor Lawrence showed off his ability to throw the ball, but man, he took some hits. And Jacksonville's offensive line has been a work in progress for a couple of years. You got to be better than that last night. You got to protect the franchise. And that's going to be a big storyline for this team. So for me, Ben, I know it's a preseason game. I didn't see Trevor Lawrence last night and go, oh my, he looks terrible. I thought he was making rush throws. He was dealing with pressure in the 2+ quarters he played and was not able to get the ball downfield. The talent is there, but you've got to protect him so he can make plays.
Yeah, the thing that Trevor Lawrence is going to have to realize, if you haven't realized, it's just like an Urban Meyer, what used to be is over with. You're no longer the best player on the best team in the best conference. You're no longer saying, hey, man, we're gonna try to, see how many, hey, coach, how many plays you think I'm going to get in the second half? Trevor Lawrence needs to learn how to protect himself. The type of hits he took last night, that could have ended his season. And this is the thing that Trevor Lawrence is always going to get the benefit of the doubt of. When you're the number 1 overall pick, you know what people say? Hey, man, he played really bad, but he made a throw to let you know this guy. Well, everybody can do that. Gardner Minshew might be the best thing you have on your roster right now. It might be in the best interest of the Jaguars to start Gardner. Why? If you're going to trade him anyway, let me get the most out of him before I trade him. And BJ and Kevin, I'm telling you, to have extended success in the NFL at quarterback, you do not start them game one. Look at that retooled offensive line from what I saw last night. That wasn't Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney they was going up against last night. Davenport and them boys, they were feasting. And the thing about Trevor Lawrence that every quarterback has to learn, there is a clock that has to go off in your head. You know what they want you to do? They want to cover all the receivers, and they want you to pull it down and run. They come on. Come on, Mr. Lawrence. Football players on defense hit extremely hard, and they come in bunches. So the last thing you want is to be pulling down and throwing it away. But Trevor, BJ, I know, obviously he's the future. But you were 1-15. 1-15, and you got rid of some of your best players. You let some other guys move on. You don't just turn into a playoff team, even if you are in the AFC South. So they're gonna have to make a decision about with Trevor. Andy Dalton starting from Chicago. I don't think he's better than Justin Fields, but let the young guys learn the game first. So I know that Trevor's gonna start because it's about putting butts in the seats. But those hits he took last night, every time he get hit, they put the camera on Urban Meyer. Because Urban going, I'm just saying, man, you got to make it now 17 games. You got to protect yourself. You got to know when the play is over, and running and trying to truck 3 defensive players in the NFL, that's not a winning strategy. Muted.
Yep. And we didn't get a chance to talk about the Braves Yankees there, but we'll get to that coming up a little bit later on the show. Jags, one more preseason game to get it all figured out before they start for real. We'll come back. College football is just days away with the first opening weekend of college football before en masse opening next weekend. Who's got the toughest go of it around college football? We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It is 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us. College football will be back on Saturday. Excited about that. Some games there for us to talk about, but certainly that means games that count are back first and foremost, and the big opening next week. But who's got the toughest go? Everybody likes to talk about that. Oh, you didn't play anybody, or no, nobody was going to win with our schedule. It was so tough. Well, Bill Connolly did the SP Plus SOS ratings. Who's got the hardest schedule? Arkansas. BJ, number 1, Nebraska. Number 2, Auburn, Georgia Tech, and Purdue, the top 5 schedules. So I look at a couple of those programs trying to prove that they're on the way back up with some of the toughest schedules in college football.
Okay, first and foremost, this matters because we need this context, right? If we're going to move forward in an era of college football evaluation where we're not just ranking all the 12-0 teams, then all the 11-1 teams, then all the 10-2 teams, we have to have a better kind of understanding of strength of schedule and the difficulty that presents. I mean, a team like Arkansas, and Bill Connolly does a great job with S&P Plus, they play, I think, 4 top 15 teams and obviously have the difficulty that is the SEC week to week, even if you're not playing an Alabama or a Texas A&M or an LSU. And I think we have to account for that when we look at a team's record. You know, you may look at an Arkansas this year and see them as a 4-8 team. And yes, you are what your record says you are. But when you evaluate a record through the prism of how difficult it is, maybe you view Arkansas functionally in terms of kind of the same ability level as a 7-5 team out of the ACC Coastal. And I think it matters to have a context, to have a frame of reference with strength of schedules. Now, for me, and I know they're not an SEC team, used to be, but my team with the toughest schedule in the country is Georgia Tech. And I know this is a young team with Jeff Collins. I think they're going to be really competitive this year. Now, what does that mean in terms of the final record? I don't know. But Georgia Tech, I want to make sure I have this math right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Georgia Tech plays 5 teams in the preseason top 15. That's Clemson at Clemson, by the way. North Carolina, Miami at Miami, by the way. Notre Dame at Notre Dame, and Georgia. And you talk about your finish to the season, you have at Notre Dame and Georgia on November 20th and November 27th. You have Clemson and North Carolina in back-to-back weeks in mid to late September. So not only are there very, very difficult games for Georgia Tech, they come in consecutive order, which is tough. I mean, Ben, you have the pre-Georgia, Florida, a week off or bye week for those teams. And normally you see that when you have a difficult stretch of your schedule. That is not the case for Georgia Tech. So to me, Georgia Tech has the toughest schedule in the country, but I think having a frame of reference like this can help us better interpret records when we try to rank teams in our minds.
When you start looking at an AP poll or a coaches poll, you see Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Georgia. You start looking at the toughest schedules, the number 1 team is Arkansas. BJ, Arkansas was going to have a tough schedule no matter what, but they have the hardest schedule because you talk about LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, Alabama. But then I go way down the list. I see number 62. That's North Carolina. I see 70 for Clemson. What do North Carolina and Clemson have in common? In the same conference. What do they not do? Play each other in the regular season. So that's like the crash course. Maybe those two teams got a chance to play each other in the ACC championship game, but these schedules are crazy to make sure that the best teams in the country make it, remain the best teams. Look at their schedules. Look at who they're playing. I mean, Auburn, if Bo Nix had any shot, him and Tank Bigsby had any shot of, making some noise, this schedule is going to prove they got the 3rd hardest schedule. Georgia Tech. I mean, BJ, you talking about Sims and Gibbs? They got the 4th hardest schedule in the country. Michigan, it ain't happening. Indiana, it ain't happening. LSU, y'all have these 6. Y'all got these 6, 7, and 8 hardest schedules in the country. Now, I understand people go college football is college football. No, scheduling is college football. Who you play? Because BJ, if you haven't earned the benefit of the doubt. That's why they said, well, we can't give Clemson a hard schedule because they're not going to get a lot of help. Clemson is the 70th hardest schedule, and they play Georgia first game of the year, and they literally get no help after that. Like we ain't really gonna get much help. But yep, Alabama, I mean, it's respectable. It's 16. Ohio State is 25. Notre Dame is 35. Them boys, they have 44. Georgia's at 47. So yeah, some of these teams, I mean, unfortunately, Sam Pittman, not only do you got the hardest schedule in the country in 2021, they did an all-AC schedule and threw it in the hat. You had Georgia, first game of the year 2020. Sam Pittman's like, what did I do to y'all, man? Like, I'm in the hardest conference in college football now. I got the hardest schedule. So yeah, so BJ, dare I say, if Arkansas makes it to 6 wins this year, is that worthy of even a college football playoff nod when you look at the fact that they
hold on now. You laugh at that. You say that laughingly, and Christian sent in a quote from Sam Pittman saying, quote, on our football schedule, we are the defending national champions of the hardest football schedule in college. And I agree. But no, Kevin, I think this stuff matters because it provides context. And especially as we move into an era where schedules are more difficult, maybe you play more conference games, I think we have to understand that based on a schedule and a resume, there could very easily be a set of circumstances where a 9-3 team is better than an 11-1 team or has a better resume than an 11-1 team. I think having at least a frame of reference like this matters.
I think it would be interesting to see what it looks like now, obviously, which we can, and then go do this again at the end of the season and see what the strength of schedule actually turned out to be. Because I know a lot of times in the preseason, you say, well, hey, we got Auburn, we got Ole Miss, we got Mississippi State. And that sounds good when you say the name out loud. And then when you go look at the record, you go, well, were they really that tough? So I think the same can be said for, the Big Ten, Pac-12, what have you. It's like, oh, we got to play Oregon. Well, what if Oregon ends up 8-4? Were they as difficult as maybe we thought it was going to be preseason? But yeah, I think you look at this, it's no surprise that the teams that are competing are not in the top 5. I mean, you're not going to, one, because unless they're competing against themselves, they would be pushed down by everybody else they play because they're a top 5 school. But Alabama in the top 16, that kind of surprised me there with them at number 16. You look at all the other contenders that are potentially there. Ohio State a little bit below them. Oklahoma a little bit below them. Georgia all the way back there at 47. So, yeah, I think you look at Oklahoma's actually at 55. So you look at it's Clemson at 70. So you look at the contenders, they're kind of down the list. I think it's kind of says a lot, though. As I said, you would think if I'm 1, 2, or 3, pretty much everybody I play that's not ahead of me, which is only a few teams, is going to pull me down in the strength of schedule rankings. But to see a team like Clemson all the way back at 70 is a little disconcerting for a team that wants to compete for the national championship. I'm not saying you got to be top 10 because that's just, as you said, BJ, if you want the toughest schedule, don't expect to win all your games. But I think you got to be better than 70, right? I mean, I think you need to bump that up, get in the top 50 at least, right? Maybe the top 45.
Well, I think that point, though, Kevin, that point is why we've heard a couple of media people say, hey, this game against Clemson for Georgia, it matters. It's a barometer game. But this game for Clemson, if they lose, and you hate to say a team that's made 7 straight college football playoffs loses in week 1, they're not going to make it. But when you look at the schedule and the resume, depending upon how the season plays out, I think there's a chance that could happen.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when it all shapes up. If Clemson loses week 1, how much work do they got to put in order to get themselves back there? Because it's one thing to say that, hey, Georgia Tech's got the 4th hardest schedule. Okay, but that doesn't mean they're the 4th hardest team you play. Georgia Tech may be a 3-win team. That's not going to boost your resume just because they played a tough schedule. So if you're Clemson, I think that's going to be something to certainly watch as the season progresses, especially after week number 1. If they come out on the short end against Georgia, what do they need to do to kind of get back in the favorable eye for the playoffs? We got more to come here. It's 3 and Out on this Tuesday afternoon all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us here on this Tuesday. Matt Smith will join us next hour. We'll talk about the alliance with the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12. Rich Stiles will join us next hour as well, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. We'll talk some golf with him, and we'll take 3 in hour number 2 as well. But BJ, again, final now week of the preseason in the NFL. Jacksonville last night. What did you see? Are you sold on the Urban Meyer vision at this point, or are you wanting to see more?
I think I understand that it's the preseason, and there was a lot of angst from Jaguars fans on social media last night, and naturally, when the tone is optimistic, right, all offseason and all preseason, and you're talking about huge names, Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, and then you come out in your first couple of preseason games and you don't look great. I mean, Ben, I get it, but I still go back to the notion that it's the preseason. I think sometimes you're working on things that you need to work on in live game action. I think the offensive line did not look great, and there's a reason for concern there, but that's nothing new. But am I kind of dissuaded by what I've seen so far in the preseason? No, I'm trying to take all of this with a grain of salt and understand that it will get real soon. But Ben, you mentioned this already. This is a one-win team from a year ago. You got to take baby steps.
Well, BJ, for this team, you need to be focusing on the preseason because a lot of these guys are going to be key contributors when the real games do start. Trevor Lawrence, he can't say look at it just a preseason. This is the only professional experience he has. He has to understand that this is a retooled offensive line, and he better learn to duck. He better learn to get down, and if he takes off and run, he better learn how to slide.
Yeah, duck and cover, get out the way, Trevor Lawrence. Is the key for him here in 2021. Jags will finish up this next week of the preseason and jump right in it in divisional play in 2 weeks when the NFL kicks off for good. We've got Matt Smith coming up right around the corner here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Welcome back. Hour 2 of 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, BJ Bennett. Glad you're making us a part of your day. Of course, the big news from college football, the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 formed an alliance of sorts. So we'll talk about that with our next guest, Matt Smith, southernpigskin.com, who joins us here on the program. Matt, always a pleasure to have you. How are you?
Hello, allies. I'm doing well. How are y'all?
I'm glad to be aligned with you, Matt Smith. We are doing well. What does that alliance mean? Well, you tell us. You kind of been in the nuts and bolts of this. It seemed like the press release was like, we want to work together, but we're not going to tell you what exactly that means. So what did you kind of draw from it?
Yeah, certainly pretty vague. I was kind of surprised they even bothered with a press conference and didn't just issue a release. But I guess if you're looking at kind of the various pillars, for lack of a better term, that make up this sport right now, you kind of have your playoff, postseason pillar, you have expansion realignment, you have television, you have scheduling, and you have regulatory compliance. So I don't see much going on in terms of regulatory compliance type stuff. I don't think they're necessarily aligned to block the SEC from limiting recruiting restrictions per se. I don't think that's really a goal or anything there. TV is pretty locked in because of the ACC. We're going to have a lot of deals coming up in the next 3 or 4 years. The ACC is going into the 2030s, I believe. So I don't see anything really coming from that, at least regular season, right? So scheduling, playoff, and conference realignment are kind of where you would think that the goal of this entire 41-team organization is headed. In terms of the specifics, we're not quite sure. It looks like the scheduling piece is a way to give teams do non-conference games against one team from the other conference that they're aligned with. That would make sense. That would give most teams 10 Power 5 games. I think that's where we all kind of thought this sport is headed. And just playoff expansion is if you do lock pretty much all these teams into 10 Power 5 games, is there room to play the SEC in these non-conference? Or are they going to get their hand forced to go to 10 conference games themselves? And then you're eliminating data points from which the SEC has kind of dominated. Because when Texas and Oklahoma joined the league, we were talking, okay, well, heck, with 16 teams and 2 more superpowers coming in, maybe the SEC is looking at 4 of the 6 at-large spots in the 12-team playoff. They're going to have 5 of the 12 teams. Well, if you're not getting them those data points, how are you going to just say the SEC is clearly dominant without just saying, all right, we're going based on recruiting and the eye test and all that stuff we hear every year during the ranking shows and such. So an alliance against that to protect them from, dominating the playoff and getting out of the Final Four and just kind of running the sport. Potentially, we don't know where the playoff is necessarily going to land, but I'm going to 12 at some point, whether that's 2 years, 5 years, I don't know. And I guess the other thing on the television, the final pillar is, are they trying to prevent ESPN from owning the entire playoff, the 11 games, I guess it would be for a 12-team playoff? Is Fox behind this at all being a key partner of 2 of the 3 leagues in this alliance? Do they want in at some point when this thing would come up for bid, theoretically, starting with the 2026 season? So it's some conglomeration there of scheduling, playoff expansion, television, I guess. In terms of the nuts and bolts, yeah, it was just a lot of vagueness today, a lot of platitudes, a lot of want to be best. We make sure academics are all in line and have the best institutions in the world, and all that stuff you hear from athletic administrators all the time. I think the nuts and bolts will play itself out over the next year or so. But yeah, not a lot today, but that's just kind of where I kind of see this going. But timing is very up in the air at this point.
And Matt, I guess when news of this potentially happening first broke, there was at least some speculation amongst fans of, okay, these 3 leagues are going to kind of collectively bargain new media rights deals that could be more profitable. But you mentioned the ACC's television deal. It was said in the press conference, and I guess there's no contract, but it was said that current deals will not be renegotiated. Well, the ACC's TV deal runs through 2036. So that's 15 years away. I mean, is there any way this could result in a more profitable media rights deal collectively or individually, or because of the ACC's deal, is that
Yeah,
just
I
not
think
possible?
because of that. Yeah, because we have the Notre Dame aspect as well. They're kind of part of this, so they're going to want to stay doing their own thing as much as possible. The timing of the end dates for these are way off because of the ACC. And then thirdly, I don't think you're talking about equal properties. I think the Big Ten is far and away the most lucrative of the three conferences in this alliance. They're up right there with the SEC in terms of what they can pull in revenue-wise from their TV partners. So for them to join this alliance for television purposes makes absolutely no sense. Big Ten hasn't made some decisions that have made no sense over the last year. But if I'm in Kevin Warren's shoes, this is in no way the goal of this alliance is to consolidate our television rights. When I have, probably 3 or 4 of the 6 biggest fish that are going to drive the bus here in terms of TV ratings, when I have Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, and the other conferences may only have a USC and Clemson in terms of huge TV draws, why am I going to lump that all together? That makes no sense to me. So I don't think this is about television, at least from a regular season perspective. As I said, it could be a way to help Fox get their foot in the door in terms of being a partner for the playoff when it expands, assuming it does. But yeah, there's just too many things when you look at the details to conclude that this is actually about consolidating television rights.
I mean, man, when you think about obviously what the SEC has done, even though this alliance came out and said that they were not making this move because of Oklahoma and Texas, which we know it to be otherwise. Why can't who's gonna be kind of like the voice for this entire alliance? You got 3 different commissioners saying 3 different things, saying we're coming together, but we're not coming together. We're not really worried about schedule. We're not really. It's the first time I've ever seen a deal come together of powerhouse conferences that doesn't have any paperwork. How did they drop the ball so bad on this? And what does it say about how strong does it make Greg Sankey look, and how weak does it make these commissioners of the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and obviously the ACC when they can't seem to come together to come to some type of common denominator?
Well, great question. I think that was framed very nicely about having one voice, and there's no one guy you can point. Say if Jim Delaney was still in charge of the Big Ten, or if John Swofford was still in charge of the ACC. Kevin Warren's the longest tenured of these 3 guys, and he's been there 18 months, maybe less than that. Phillips obviously has connections with the Big Ten coming from Northwestern, but he just started ACC a few months ago. Whereas Kliakoff at the Pac-12 is only a couple months there, so you're not looking to one guy who's going to be the voice here. And to think they're going to be aligned and speaking multiple times a week about their goals and such, that doesn't seem plausible. There's still egos here. There's still separate conferences, and they're going to want what's best. And we know we got at least 8 teams out there looking for homes, and they're not going to be vetting this. Hey guys, hey ACC, hey Pac-12, we're talking to Kansas and Iowa State tomorrow. Any questions we should ask of them? No, I mean that's all being under the table. So, hey, there's actually going to be one voice. I don't know who that would be. I think that's a valid concern. And the comment about not having a official contract or something, that's completely ridiculous. We know how this stuff works. You can say you're giving these guys your word, but we know that's not how college sports plays out. So that's a ridiculous assertion if they actually buy into that. So, I think in that sense, it probably does make Greg Sankey look good because he's wielded all the power he's shown over the last couple of months, playoff and adding Texas and Oklahoma. So I think that is a concern about, is this actually a unified voice when they're making comments like they did today about not needing a contract? I said that's just ridiculous to think that's actually reality.
I mean, Matt, at the end of the day, obviously the Big 12 is done, right? I mean, when you come together and say, we're going to make an alliance and just totally disregard one of the, quote, Power 5 conferences out there, I mean, that thing is just done as soon as Oklahoma and Texas get out of there, right?
I presume so. I don't really see any way it lasts. I mean, certainly there's talks about grabbing some AAC schools. I don't see the need for that. I mean, I guess they probably split up. Maybe the ACC would want West Virginia. I don't know. I don't know about Kansas, what the value of that brand is to the Big Ten. Is basketball have zero effect on this? Have a tiny effect, maybe more of a moderate effect on that? I don't know, certainly a huge brand from that. They're not giving me much in football. But I could see some of those teams getting homes with TCU. That kind of makes sense to the AAC there. We already have SMU and Houston and Tulsa. That's a neat fit. Could Kansas State end up in the Mountain West and try and develop something with Wyoming and Colorado State? Would that make sense? That's kind of, I see them kind of dividing up and just going their separate ways. I don't see how it's sustainable. When there's just no major brand left in that group. So I guess that's kind of how I see it going. But yeah, I think we'll be down to a Power Four. Perhaps as soon as next year, maybe 2 years. We'll see.
And Matt, I wanted to ask you this about kind of summarizing what this alliance represents. One of my first thoughts was we've seen so much in college athletics, right? With college football specifically, with, Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC, with name, image, likeness, with the college football playoff expansion. And the SEC has been kind of front and center, obviously with the expansion, but even with some of the other stuff. Is this alliance in some ways just the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 kind of saying slow down, just trying to press the pause button here so they can kind of collect their thoughts and figure out what to do moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's a last-ditch effort to prevent this thing from just going full blow like the National College Football League, where you have your 32-some powerhouses and they're competing in their neat little divisions, and you have your playoff bracket, and it's just like every other major sport. So I think this is the last ditch to keep some semblance of the uniqueness of college football. Because of that, because we're seeing what the SEC does. You see, all right, are they going to try to invade us any further and try to go to 20 or 24 teams and just take every big brand and then we're done? Then we're basically into a Premier League and a Championship League, or like they would have in English soccer. So it does seem like a bit of a last gasp before this thing just becomes like every other professional sports league we follow. And, for me, who loved it because of the uniqueness, I hope it works. Certainly turning in the wrong direction. But yeah, I think that's kind of what this is. It's just trying to pump the brakes, if that's even possible at this point, given how fast this sport has been traveling over the last 6 months or so here this offseason.
And man, even sticking with the whole brand thing, obviously Oklahoma and Texas doesn't get much bigger of a brand than that. How much of this was perception, not match reality? A lot of these teams, they used to be big brands. And I'm not saying they still don't have brand equity, but they ain't the brands they used to be. I mean, USC and UCLA used to run the Pac-12. Oregon might be the best team in the conference right now. Ohio State is Ohio State. Clemson is Clemson. But is it because maybe some of these teams, we grew up watching them and knowing what type of tradition they have, but as of late, they haven't been the teams we've grown up watching them to be anymore?
Yeah, I think you just need such a long period of time of lack of success for these brands to fall off. I mean, we still talk about Nebraska. I mean, how much do we talk about Scott Frost on the hot this time? Every time he loses a game, they're still a big deal, and no one under 30 has seen them be a national title contender. So I think it takes even longer than that before a brand completely falls off just because of the tradition and the money that has been built up in the coffer to this point. So I'm not too concerned about that. If you're trying to invade the Pac-12, I still think USC is the bigger brand, despite Oregon having more success probably in total over the last years or so. That's a fair question. When you have teams like Nebraska and Michigan and Tennessee struggling, you're wondering how long can this keep up before they kind of fall off the map as a true blue blood. But I think this takes such a long stretch of mediocrity. Minnesota probably 30 or 40 years to really fall off because they were a power in the 30s and 40s and such. But if those schools get to that point, maybe. But I think the schools you're probably alluding to, Ben, I don't think we're there yet. I think it'll probably take another 20 years or so of no success at all before you really worry about the devaluation of those brands. Because we see the ratings. Tennessee still draws well. Nebraska still draws well. And they haven't done anything on the field for 20 years. They're still drawing eyeballs, so I think it's still another cycle, maybe even a generation away before we're at that point.
Matt Smith, SouthernPigskin.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Matt, always a pleasure. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
You bet, guys. Anytime.
Appreciate it. Matt Smith joining us here from SouthernPigskin.com. As again, the alliance was for it's like watching a game or Survivor or something. It's like you go form your alliances off to the side and this and that and what have you. But as he said, is it just a last-ditch effort to keep the SEC from going to 20? And if they go to 20, is that ball game over for kind of the conferences and college athletics as we know it at that point?
I mean, I think so. I think so, Kevin. But at the same time, this ain't how you gonna keep them around. What? We don't even have anything going, so they're gonna have to do better than this.
Hey, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Rich Styles is going to join us from the Back Nine Boys when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you're with us here on this Tuesday. Thanks for making us a part of your day. We've got a lot to get to here on the show. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, joins us here on 3 and Out. Rich, welcome. How are you?
Doing wonderful, guys, on this somewhat rainy, now sunny day.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you have the playoffs going on now. Tony Finau getting a win last week, just his second career victory in 143 starts. Now he's got a playoff win.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. This is one of the good guys on the tour. I mean, he's liked by everybody. 5 years it's been since his last win, as you said, 142 tournaments. He was 3 shots off the lead going into the back nine and ended up going birdie, shooting 6 under, 65 to win, and jumps to number 1 in the FedEx Cup playoffs for the BMW. Got 30 on the back nine and 1 on the first playoff hole with a par.
I was going to say, Rich, talk about his potential. I know a guy that a lot of people have talked about for some time, but to get this win, what potentially is next for Tony Finau?
Well, you know, the first win is always something that you strive for and you want to have. And sometimes the first win comes quicker than you might imagine. Sometimes it comes a lot later. But also, I've talked to some of the pros here and around, and they've said sometimes the second win is even harder. And so he's been close. I mean, he's had a lot of top 10 finishes. He's earned a lot of money over the years. He's a good guy. He's a very good golfer. Got it all together. And I think this second win just propels him to an opportunity to come up now in the FedEx Cup playoffs. Tony Finau has now gained a lot of confidence, which is something that's really, really good at this time of the year.
And Rich, I mean, you know, even talking about confidence, Cameron Smith, you know, coming in right behind Tony Finau, I think made a little bit over $15 million his entire career. Got a chance to make $15 million in one day, being ranked top 5 right now in the FedEx Cup standings.
Yeah, he's having a great year, and he unfortunately missed a 25-foot birdie on the 18th. It would have won it for him, and then he lost in the playoff. He shot 67, but he also shot a 60. I mean, just had a great weekend and has propelled himself, as you said, into the top 5. This going into the BMW, coming out in the top 10 for the FedEx Cup playoffs just makes a difference because you start out under par.
Rich, when you talk about the FedEx Cup playoffs, walk us through the format again and kind of where we are moving from last weekend to this weekend.
Well, this weekend, obviously, will come up the final FedEx Cup playoff standings. And if you are in the top 10, you're going to start out under par, as I said. Under par is going to be the number 1 guy is going to be under par going into the FedEx Cup playoffs. And the next few spots are going to be -8, -6, and so on down the line. And your last 5 are going to be an even par. So even if you're in the top 30, the main guy is going to win $15 million. But being 30, if you end up 30 and play horrible the whole weekend, you're still going to make almost $400,000 just by making it into the top 30 of the FedEx Cup playoffs.
Rich, I mean, the curious case of Jordan Spieth. I mean, Spieth, the only player in the last 20 seasons to make consecutive eagles and consecutive triples or worse in the same PGA tournament event. I mean, talk about just like the roller coaster there is. Jordan Spieth, good enough to win any tournament, but plays bad enough to lose any tournament.
I think Jordan Spieth is definitely back. I think he's got the confidence. I mean, the 2 eagles that he made back to back and the 2 triple bogeys that he made back to back, all you can say about it is that's golf, and it happens. I mean, you could have the best day ever, goof it all up on the 18th hole and end up not winning the tournament, not even making the playoffs. Jordan Spieth is in a great position. I mean, he's still number 7 on the FedEx Cup list. So, I mean, he's in a great place right now, and I think he's playing well. Got a couple of bad holes.
Rich, who are you going to be watching? Who do you think the pressure is on this week at the BMW Championship up in Baltimore?
Well, I think definitely the pressure is going to be on Phil Mickelson. because he's number 70, and I think he still would like to be named to the Ryder Cup rather than be a captain's pick. Of course, I think he'd like to make it either way, but would like to earn his way to be a captain's pick. And I think the pressure's on him to play well at the BMW. He's not had a great year, and he's not been playing extremely well, but he is 70 on the list. And for him to go from 70 into the top 30, it's almost like he's got to be in the top 2, top at the BMW to even have a chance. So I think there's going to be some pressure on him. I think there's going to be some, extra added pressure on Jon Rahm, who was our leader for the last, weekend at the Northern Trust. And I think pressure is going to be on him because he kind of faltered. I mean, he kind of hit some great shots, ended up one on the water, a couple out of bounds. I think Jon Rahm is going to be wanting to make a bigger name for himself. And Colin Morikawa, who has had a fantastic year, but missed the cut at the Northern Trust, is going to have some pressure on him, even though he's in the top 10 for the FedEx Cup. But I think he would like to have a good weekend here at the BMW going into and the top 30.
And Rich, you mentioned him a second ago, man. Jon Rahm, played extremely well. In the Northern Trust, just came up a little bit short. When you look at Tony Finau, Cameron Smith, talk about him being obviously still being ranked number 1, and just what he brings, tournament in, tournament out.
I think John is going to play well. I mean, he's very competitive. His demeanor since he's gotten married and had a child has really changed. I mean, he used to get really upset. And, he said, after the interview, I didn't play well. I get to see my son and my wife, and, it makes everything okay. So his attitude has really changed. He's grateful to have this opportunity. He's thankful to be in this position. He's playing some great golf. I think he's one who's got, again, as we've talked about before, he's got something to prove. That something to prove is going to be that he can win again, even though he was in the lead for 3 rounds and then ended up losing it on Sunday or Monday. They had to play it over. But I think Jon Rahm's got something to prove. I also think Keith Mitchell, Harold Varner, Harry Higgs have something to prove as they move into the playoffs. They made it because they played well on Sunday. Keith Mitchell especially making 3 birdies in a row to shoot a 69. He knew he had to do it. Did it. He tied for 8th. Now he's in the top 70.
Rich Stiles of the Back Nine Boys here with us on 3 and Out. And Rich, finally, did want to ask you about J.R. Smith, who was a former NBA veteran, was a 16-year player in the NBA, and won 2 championships, and is now going to be a freshman walk-on for the North Carolina A&T men's golf team. A neat story there, and obviously a guy that's a big-time athlete and has had success as a pro athlete, but now we're going to see him at the collegiate level playing some college golf.
I think it's interesting. I'm a little bit flabbergasted, to be honest with you, by the move. Obviously, after you play in the NBA at a very high level, and now you want to play golf at a high level, and you're going back to college, to do that, it'll be interesting to see how he's accepted by other players on the team, and more importantly, how it is at the level that he thinks it is, in order to go back and go to college and try and make it that way. It'll be interesting to see what he does, how he handles it. And there's a lot of pressure. I mean, these kids in college are unbelievable golfers, both physically and mentally. And it'll be interesting to see if he can take the NBA experience and turn it into a golf experience.
Rich Stiles of the Back Nine Boys, our guest here on 3 and Out. Rich, thanks so much. We'll chat again next week.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me on.
And Ben, shout out to J.R. Smith, man. Again, almost 20 years in the NBA. Now going to go try to play some collegiate golf at NCA&T, and that's a cool story.
More like JC, Tebow. I'm just saying. BJ. At the end of the day, you got to start. It's what Rich said. Just because you've been in a position to go out there and play some golf or some big time golf tournaments because you knew LeBron and you knew some big time players. This is disrespectful. J.R. Smith is doing this because of the publicity, not because he's doing. I'm trying my best not to look at Christian while I'm saying I don't even know what Christian's doing. No, Christian's basically saying this. Christian, listen. Christian loves a couple of things. Cooking. Christian loves golf. Christian obviously loves those guys from Athens, for which I will not name them out loud. But Christian doesn't like disrespecting the game of golf. And right now, J.R. Smith or J.R. Tebow is disrespecting the game of golf, BJ. He's doing it because he can, not because he is gifted to do it. Christian, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, I wasn't doing any of the above. I was just trying to do the LeBron.
Oh, I had no idea what you were doing. At first I thought you froze. At first I thought his screen froze.
I did think he froze. I'm like, the Christian free? No, Christian.
The LeBron JR meme, you know.
Christian, if you play for A&T, if you playing for them and you see JR, do you clown him day one?
No. Why would I clown a guy who's rich?
What if you put his hands on you? Now you rich. Now you listen. You point at him like this. You put your hands on me.
We could use new golf carts. I could use some new golf clubs. We like the team quarter zips. We could use some of those. Like, why would I clown the rich guy on the team?
What if you come out there with some all black golf shoes on?
I feel like if anybody can pull it off, it's a former NBA player.
With white socks.
No, nobody can pull that off.
Okay.
Hey, watch him do really well. That's all I'm saying.
I hope he can drive it like 400 yards. The dude's like, he wasn't big in the NBA, but he's big as hell for a golfer.
Probably played a lot of golf. Ben, did you play a lot of golf during your pro career?
I did not, but I did not play a lot of golf. But Christian had me looking good on my very first time. When Christian was my swing coach, because Christian was like, "Look at there!" Plus, it got film, and so Christian got the footage just in case you want to see that thing.
All right, we'll come back with more. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
It is 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Christian Gokel, Ben Troop, all here with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Glad you are making us a part of your day. We'll chat with Josh Pate, host of The Late Kick with Josh Pate, coming up the final hour. Also, Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end, will join us in the final hour of the program as well. Had to chat with Matt Smith and Rich Stiles earlier this hour, so let's get to take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, fellas, take 1. Are you concerned about Jacksonville's offense?
I mean, the offense as a whole, no, because I think that when you look position by position, there are reasons for optimism. Look, Trevor Lawrence is going to have bad nights. He's going to have good nights. He's going to have games where it just doesn't work. He's going to have games where that athleticism results in touchdowns and even wins, I think. Yes, multiple wins with an S. And I do think the skill positions are pretty impressive depth-wise and in terms of your frontline playmakers. I think James Robinson is a go-to back in the NFL. I think DJ Shark is a go-to receiver. I think Laviska Shenault is right there. I think that Marvin Jones gives you a veteran playmaker that you haven't had in a couple of years. My concern would be the offensive line. And at tackle, you're a little uncertain opposite Jawan Taylor. Is it going to be Cam Robinson? Is it going to be Walker Little, the rookie out of Stanford? I think you got to answer those questions. If you can't protect off the edge, it's going to be a long season for Trevor Lawrence. The injury to Travis Etienne is just tough. You feel terrible for Travis individually, and you wish him the absolute best. But in terms of being a kind of a home run hitter out of the backfield, he was a different type playmaker. Different running back than James Robinson. So losing Etienne hurts. There's no way to kind of make up for that with a personnel move. But I still think there are pieces to be excited about on this offense. My question, much like with Atlanta, is can the offensive line block?
I have a big concern with Jacksonville's offense because I think the guy who's orchestrating the offense is not living in a reality. The thing about Urban Meyer, even though you got an OC, I know they got Brian Schottenheimer, you got to understand. It's not going to just work because of your personnel. You don't have the best personnel on the field. You might have the least talented team every time you step out there now when you used to have the most talented team. You got a rookie quarterback who can make big throws. Surprise, surprise. National Football League, he can make big throws. James Robinson, BJ, was a top 100 player. How do I know? Because all the guys around the league voted. He was number 100. So out of all the players in the league, he got voted a top 100 player, which says a lot by undrafted free agent. I just think that for me, what makes the offense scary is you think that Trevor Lawrence can just get you there. It's not going to happen like that. I like Laviska Shenault. I like Marvin Jones. Look, I like DJ Chark. I even like the tight end out of Ohio State who had a big catch yesterday. You got to protect Trevor Lawrence. You're gonna have to run the football, and Urban Meyer, you and Brian Schottenheimer, they're gonna have to call plays to put him in the best possible situation. Get him outside the pocket, roll him out. He made an incredible throw to his left, being a right-hand quarterback yesterday. But yes, I'm concerned because once again, Trevor's not used to this. Urban's not used to this, and they've only been used to being at the top of whatever they're doing. It's not going to work. You were 1-15, whether you had nothing to do with that or not. Y'all were on a team that was 1-15 last year. You don't just turn it around this year, BJ, because you're talking about that offense. That defensive line, Josh Smith is good, but Chase on, I saw him doing a lot of chasing last night, not a lot of catching. It's going to be rough, but that offense, BJ, they're going to have to call plays better than that if you want your future quarterback to last 17 games.
I know it's the preseason, fellas, but the fact that your third-string quarterback is the only quarterback to put one in the end zone thus far is a little bit disconcerting. That's all I'm saying when it comes to Jacksonville's offense. I know it's the preseason. You're not scheming it up. A little disconcerting that C.J. Beathard's the only one that put together a touchdown scoring drive here in the preseason. Moving along, take 2. Which ACC school is the closest to being a yearly contender with Clemson? And somebody has to be closest. It may not
Yeah.
be close, but somebody has to be closest.
I think that's the key point. Just because you're closest doesn't mean you're close. But for me, I think it's Miami. I feel very comfortable saying it's Miami, and North Carolina might be the closest for this season. Maybe it is Miami. I think long term, you still like the foundation that Florida State has, that Virginia Tech has. But when I look at Miami, I think some of the talk, a lot of people talk very dismissively about Miami, right? Like, oh man, Miami is, some relic of the past, like they're Tennessee or Nebraska. And that isn't entirely fair. I think sometimes, and yes, I like the counter there from Christian. Kevin, you've left your mic muted 3 times. All right, so we have the counter there. But I think when people talk about Miami, they forget that, last season Miami was 8-3. Okay, in 2017, they won 10 games and played in the Orange Bowl. So for all the talk of, Miami, it was 10 or 15 years ago, they were at least in the theoretical college football playoff hunt. They have been in recent years. They've won 10 games recently. They've been in the New Year's Six. It's not unfathomable to look ahead this season and potentially see Miami as a New Year's Six team. And we'll see. They have the ultimate litmus test against Alabama in week 1 in Atlanta. But I think that Miami, while not close to Clemson, they are closer to consistent national relevancy than I think a lot of people give them credit for. They still recruit really well. They're still sending guys to the league. You still have that incredible brand recognition, which I think is bigger than a program like North Carolina. I mean, Miami football is Miami football. So for me, I think it's the U, and I think it's the U by fairly decent margin. Again, Florida State can get there. North Carolina maybe this year, but I think it's the U.
I think it's the U too. UNC. Because BJ, they're the team that came the closest.
Is that the U?
That is not the U. That is UNC, the North Carolina boys. Anyway, they came the closest, Kevin, to beating Clemson, right? Because I'm sorry, what is y'all looking around for? Y'all know what I'm trying to say. Y'all know I mean the UNC. No, not the U, just UNC. Anyway, before I lose my
I'm going to go with the U also. The University of Louisville. No, that's not how it works.
I thought we had a Bono reference in there too. Like I heard U2, UNC. There's a lot.
North Carolina. I'm just gonna say that it's the North Carolina Tar Heels. That's what I think is the because last time I checked, BJ, that's the team that's came the closest to beating Clemson between them and Miami. I know that you're gonna have to have a Sam Howell type player right there, and it comes back to play calling. If you go head to head with Clemson and you got a shot to kick the extra point and go to overtime, do that. Don't run the option.
No. If you're the underdog and you're at home and you can beat Clemson with one play, you do that. You don't go into overtime and take the team that's better and more talented than you. But here's the thing. You don't run the option when you're not an option football team.
No. You take your chances. If you have been staying in the game all game, let's just take them a little longer. BJ, one play against Clemson, it sounds like a good idea until it doesn't happen. Kick the extra point. Go to overtime to where you shrink the field and you get a chance to get in the zone. I'm just saying, North Carolina had a shot to beat them, Syracuse. So I'm just saying, at the end of the day, it is North Carolina, BJ. Even though Miami, might have a little bit more better talent, I think the quarterback position is what North Carolina seems to be doing better at. So give me them boys from Chapel Hill.
Give me the U. No, I don't know. Just call everybody the U also, and just go with that. I don't know if anybody's truly close. I think the teams you could look at. I mean, it could easily be North Carolina. It could easily be Miami. It could easily be Virginia Tech. It could be a number of teams because the Coastal's kind of got 3 or 4 teams that could step up in a big way. I will say the U for right now because to me they have the most talent that is at least closest to Clemson there on the football field, even though it's not very close. I don't think if they were playing the ACC championship next week, I don't think we would pick North Carolina with maybe 2 touchdowns of this thing when it's done at the end of the day. All right, moving along, take 3. We got to get to the important question here on take 3. It is National Waffle Day. Christian always likes to look up with the important questions, the hard-hitting questions. For last, National Waffle Day, which though is better, pancakes or the waffle?
This is embarrassing. It's a pancake. It's a pancake. Pancake is as good as it gets. Now, if we want to do some scientific research to kind of study this, we can do that. But look, the pancake is so soft, so warm. You can roll it up. You can dip it. You can make little pancake sticks and dip it in the syrup, or you can go with the fork. And yeah, I want it to be soft.
No, you're soft.
I don't want it to be. That's fine. I don't want a crunchy waffle. I want a soft pancake that I can easily rip apart, that I can roll up, that I can cut into little tiny strips if I want. Give me the pancake, and yes, I'm going to eat it with sugar-free syrup. Give me the sugar-free syrup, and it still tastes delicious because it's a warm, hot, soft, inviting, welcoming, just lovable pancake.
Look, I love pancakes. I love that sweet bread. I do. I love that sweet bread. Shout out to my grandma who used to call that sweet bread. But let me tell you something about these waffles, man. Let me tell y'all something. You want to be able to take each individual little, and just put the little syrup in each individual little square right there, man. You can cut it in fours. You can pick it up like a piece of pizza. You can just, I just love it. And shout out to my nephew. Me and him sat there one time, and I said, boy, you think you can out do your uncle eat these waffles? He did. You know what I'm saying? But I think he didn't eat the day before. You know what I'm saying? I think he was sick. He was trying to make up for the previous day. But yes, it's going to be the waffles for me, BJ. You know what I'm saying? And Kevin, I will take a crunchy waffle. It will be crunchy. And I don't have to add all the toppings. I mean, I know certain people like the fruit on it. I know certain people like the powdered sugar. I know certain people, I've seen certain people put honey on top of their waffles. But for me, I like, you take it and fold it. I love a Belgian waffle. I can get the little, I'm not going to mention the franchise. They got the little small waffle. It looks like a pancake, but it got the little lines in it, so it is a waffle. Kevin, it is near and dear to your heart, too. Don't act like you don't like it. Give me the waffles all day, every day. Y'all can have the sweet bread. Kevin, I know what you're going to say because you're a sophisticated pancake eater with how you do with the syrup. I'm not doing sugar-free syrup. That is for crazy people. I put the regular syrup. Holla at me with the waffles.
And that is why pancakes are better than waffles. That's take 3. Hey, we do it every day here on 3. Oh, wait, Christian just threw us off, went to break. So, that's how we do here on the show. But no, the answer, since I didn't get the answer because everybody's fired up about this.
Well, why don't you guys pay attention to your producer, and maybe we won't have this problem.
I respect your authority.
But, pancakes I will take over waffles. I do like waffles, especially waffles with some chicken on top of it and some syrup. Oh, it's fantastic. Chicken and waffles is life-changing.
Chicken and waffles are elite, and waffles are elite.
It's game-changing. But a good hot stack of pancakes with butter and syrup, and it's fantastic.
A good hot stack of waffles with butter and syrup, even better.
Is there a hot stack of waffles?
You want to go to Pancake House or you want to go to Waffle House? You want to go to Pancake House or you want to go to Waffle House?
I'll take both. Okay. At the end of the day. We'll come back. Final hour of the program. Right around the corner, we've got Josh Pate waiting in the wings. We'll talk Alliance talk with him in the final hour. Also, Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end, will join us final hour as well. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Pancakes! Welcome back. Final here of 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Here as we get into the final hour, we're talking a lot of football. Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end, will join us. We'll also get some Braves and Yankees talk there as well. But joining us here, there's been alliances made, apparently, all over college football today. Here to talk about that and more, host of the Late Kick with Josh Payton, 247 Sports. Josh Payton joins us here on 3 and Out. Josh, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. I want to know, though, yes, the alliance is in the news. If I were to tell you 5 years ago, on this date, whatever, I mean, what is it, August something, 2021, there's going to be an alliance in college football. That's all I'm telling you. You have to fill in the gaps. You have to predict what it's going to be. I'm not quite sure there's anyone on God's green earth that would have gone this route. I think it's probably would have wanted to save this nickname for something a little more forceful, but here we are.
Certainly, what does it all mean at the end of the day?
Well, I think it's a little looser, than the alliance tag were to indicate. But really, I think what it means is, first and foremost, scheduling aspect of it. It is going to help, I think, and if the listeners are unfamiliar, is Pac-12, ACC, Big Ten. I think it's going to help them build a better scheduling apparatus, or in our world, it would be called inventory. And especially if you're coming up on new TV deals, you just want to be more attractive. It is true that there is a strength in numbers component to this. But what excites me, and the reason I'm not laughing at it so much anymore, and I may actually be rooting it on, is I come from the SEC. And this is not going to damage the SEC any. If anyone tells you it is, the Lions. But what I think it can do is it can really throw the brakes on this runaway train towards playoff expansion. And I'm not for playoff expansion, but even if you are for it, I think you and I can meet in the middle and agree it is never a good thing for one network to have as much control over the sport as ESPN does and has had for some time now over college football. I think a lot of people agree on that. And what was about to happen was they were about to stick their teeth fully into this thing, and that contract was never going to go to the open market. And that, a lot of new people have walked in the door, like the Pac-12 commissioner, the ACC commissioner, Big Ten commissioner, and a lot of other people. They've walked in and said, in no other walk of life, allow that to happen. Why are we going to let it happen here? So if that, we got to pour some water on this playoff expansion talk for a little while, and so be it. We can wait to 2026, but when we do, we want to give CBS and Fox and who knows what else is out there at the time. We want to give them a shot to bid on this. Or at the very least, if ESPN does lock it up, they're going to pay handsomely for it.
Josh, if this alliance is going to be functional and is going to kind of impact college sports, college football moving forward, why is there not a signed contract or a contract of some sorts kind of holding it all together?
Well, that's why I tell you, I feel like it's a lot more loose. I think it's kind of a head nod, handshake sort of deal. And I think that it almost be like a marketing firm put it together, because it's got all the hallmarks of something that's had marketing firm imprints on it. It's got the release. It's got the leak to the convenient outlets before the release. It's got the 48, 24-hour buildup. It's also got a name. But yet, what is it really? Like you said, we don't have a contract. There's not some edict. There's nothing that was nailed to a wall somewhere for everyone to read. It's just an agreement, really, that everyone is free to walk away from, but I don't think anyone is, time being. Long term, that could be a different story, because as much as these conferences say we've got a bunch in common, there are some differences here too. There's especially when it comes to the academic side of things, even within some of these conferences, everyone's not like-minded totally. And so, yeah, conference to conference, I think those problems could arise. But scheduling, I think they'll all be on board there.
Josh, when you think about these three conferences, obviously you do got some big names in these conferences. It's not really, it's very, very top heavy like the SEC is. But is there some level of order? If I'm a potential recruit and wanting to play in one of these schools and I'm hearing about this alliance, you would think that would be something I would look forward to until I come to realize this is just something that was announced. There's not really any. I've never seen something like this with no type of paperwork or nothing signed. How can this potentially hurt recruiting, especially when you really don't know what this alliance is?
Well, the way it can really hurt you in recruiting is if this is used to box out the SEC from scheduling out-of-conference games with anyone from your conference. That is never that is penny wise, pound foolish, is what that is. Because ultimately, I don't care who you're playing against, you're going to need Southern athletes so your roster at a high level. And if you're walking into the living room and telling them, hey, come to Nebraska and play, or come to Texas, well, not Texas Tech, come to UCLA and play. Now, you're never going to go to the South. We're not going to play anyone down there, so you'll never go home or anywhere close to home. Family won't really be able to watch you unless you can afford to fly them out. But still, come here and play anyway. That's a terrible strategy. And so I don't know. It seems like that's the path that we're going down, but I also don't understand how this is going to be functional, which is another loose component, because what we all understand already is that some of these schedule lists have been made for the next decade, and there are a lot of home and home matchups that are already on the books that pit ACC teams and Big Ten teams against the SEC. So I'm not quite sure it has a fraction of the impact the name, the Alliance, would lead you to believe it does.
Josh Pate joining us here, host of the Late Kick with Josh Pate. And Josh, could this simply be, like you said, a gentleman's agreement in this era of college football realignment of all three of these conferences looking at each other and say, don't you do it. All right, if you don't do it, I won't do it. I.e. go steal each other's members and try to catch up to the SEC and maybe even have backdoor handshakes about if you're going to go out after any of the remnants of the Big 12, who are you taking so we're not fighting over the school, and maybe more of that kind of thing to stave off further expansion of if you don't do it, I won't do it kind of situation.
Yeah, I think that's essentially where we're at right now. Now, here would be the true irony of ironies. If part of this agreement does, in fact, include unwillingness to schedule SEC opposition in an out-of-conference, then the beneficiary could be the Big 12. Because what you could see is the SEC needing an inventory of legitimate out-of-conference opponents and a shortage of conferences that will pair up with them. They could go to what remains of the Big 12 and form some kind of scheduling coalition with them, in which case you get a little added TV revenue. Now, again, this is all very broad strokes, because I don't think it comes to that, because I don't think you can box the SEC out of your out-of-conference games, because you got a lot of them already on the books. And so that's a lot of really, really zoomed out hypotheticals. But anything that helps the Big 12 stay afloat at this point and limits the gobbling up of this entire sport by one network,
You referenced the Big 12 there. They haven't been included in kind of any of the speculation that I've seen moving forward that we've all seen. What's the most likely scenario, Josh? Is it the Big 12 just no longer exists, or are there enough potential partnerships out there where you can kind of rebuild the league?
I still don't have a warm fuzzy about the future direction of this conference. I don't know what we're talking about really when we say, is there a way they can partner? Because I'd love to find it too. I just don't know where it is. It's not a charity. I mean, it has to make, and unfortunately, it has to make business sense. And I just don't know where it makes business sense. And that's why I bring that point up about scheduling. One of maybe the last ditch Hail Mary type saving graces that they could have is they could have the SEC all of a sudden with a need for a scheduling partner. And that may be where the Big 12 steps in. Outside of that, I don't know. I know they're going to try and pin Oklahoma and Texas to the wall and get them to stay out there until their contract runs out. I can just tell you, nobody I talk to, this league and the SEC, thinks that's going to happen. I don't know how exactly the particulars are going to work themselves out, but no one believes that's going to happen. Everyone believes it's a matter of time at this point for the Big 12.
Josh, when NIL happened, it was monumental when you talk about what it did to college football. When Texas and Oklahoma decided to come on to the SEC, it was monumental when you talk about college athletics and Greg Sankey and the SEC. When we look back on this day, what are we gonna remember the most about this alliance? I know it was supposed to be big news, but I mean, is it gonna be more of a dud when it's all said and done? Because I know this was supposed to be big, but it seems more perception than reality, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if we're talking on this date 5 years from now and we ask each other, hey, what do we think about the alliance? I think we would look at each other and go, what? What? I think we will long since have forgotten about it. No, I don't think it's going to have all that big an impact or even a ripple effect at all. I mean, if the net result of this is You see Clemson play Arizona State a couple of times down the road. No one really cares. I mean, that kind of stuff happens anyway. Out-of-conference games happen anyway. And it certainly is going to do nothing to derail the speed of the SEC. The only way that this really has a lasting legacy about it is if it truly impacts the trajectory of the college football playoff, or if it opens up the bidding market for that contract down the road and it fundamentally alters where those games air at. Now that would be an actual impact, but we're still years away from knowing whether that comes to reality.
Josh Pate joining us here, host of the Late Kick with Josh Pate, and just a couple of days away from the start of the college football season. And obviously, you took the preseason polls. People think Alabama, they think Georgia, the SEC, the other conferences. You're really talking about one team that has it. How do you see this thing playing out? And is there a conference that can raise its profile here in 2021, not named the SEC, given kind of where the preseason polls have started and what kind of the general consensus thinking on who's actually a playoff contender?
Yeah, so there are two answers there. The Pac-12 has a chance to raise their profile. That's an easy answer because there's nowhere to go but up. They are viewed as Power 5 conference. What's funny is if you take the AP poll, for example, it's not something I live and die by, but if you look at it, they got 5 teams in that top 25. They don't have any in the top 10. That's kind of been the story of the Pac-12. There's good, solid football out there, no great teams, no great programs. So it is viewed as a very watered-down product. Someone's got to change it. Should be Southern Cal. They fumbled the ball mightily. So someone's got to change it out there. But the Big Ten is in an interesting position here. Because you know about Ohio State. Penn State's going to have a really good team this year. Wisconsin's going to have a really good team this year. And there are a couple others floating around up there, like Indiana, Iowa, for example. We didn't even mention Michigan, which tells you, on one hand, what kind of situation Michigan's in. But on the other hand, if I can tell you about a fairly loaded Big Ten and not have to mention Michigan in the sport of football, that bodes well for your conference. That's a conference that could really raise its profile above and beyond being Ohio State and a bunch of randomness.
Josh Pate, host of the Late Kick with Josh Pate, our guest here on 3 and Out. Josh, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Josh Pate joining us here, 247 Sports, and obviously host of the Late Kick with Josh Pate here on 3 and Out as we see the ever-changing landscape. And it seems like the alliance with their press conference or what have you, BJ and Ben, has only led to more confusion as to what it exactly is. And I don't know if that was the purpose of it. We've had a couple of folks on to talk about it, and all of them said, yeah, I really don't think we even needed a press conference. We don't even really know what this potentially means at the end of the day.
Well, Ben, I think you were right when you talked about it potentially being more kind of hype than, actual influence or impact. And we'll have to reevaluate it in a couple of years. But I thought good perspective from Josh, kind of abstract in some respects, what has been laid out. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see if kind of more tangibility in terms of actual games being scheduled or an actual push for change with the college football playoff, et cetera, if all that comes to fruition.
I think they need to reach out to Marshawn Lynch. I mean, with stuff they're doing right now, he could do a better job, at least make it entertaining, right? I mean, Kevin, did he step into the mic and go Commissioner Marshawn Lynch? Y'all know why I'm here. No, we don't know why you're here. Like, you put out a statement, and then the statement behind the statement was even worse than the actual. I'm just saying. I mean, when you start talking about the people in these high-ranking positions, maybe commissioners aren't really in position to negotiate. Like, people think, they can negotiate, right? Like, not really. Like, if you see this right here, you got 3 different people on 3 different wavelengths trying to come together as one to be able to do what's better for an alliance that they don't even know what it is. Like, we didn't sign anything. We didn't really do anything. Greg Sankey go, hey, man, I can show you how to get – no. We don't need you, Greg, because you get stuff done. We want to make it – we give the illusion over here. So, all right, well, we'll see what happens. But the Big 12 right now, active members are looking for somewhere to call home, and I don't think the alliance is looking good for them right now.
Yeah, they just left them totally out of discussions. Like, hey, y'all keep hanging out over there. We'll do our own thing over here. Again, this is going to be the development of college football because you got the sense – that at least Kansas had wondering eyes, talking about, hey, if this is going down, let's get out. I wonder if mid-season, BJ, you see an announcement of Kansas or Oklahoma State or somebody with some wandering eyes saying they're going out too, and then that's probably truly the end of the Big 12, and it's a free-for-all at that point.
Yeah, potentially. I think there's a lot of unknown, but Kevin probably won't be soon until we have those answers. Probably going to take a while.
Yeah, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll come back. Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end, will join us next. We're talking Georgia Clemson with him on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hello? What's up? They have pads on, right? Well, then don't hit people unless you're told to. But try hard and listen to what they say. All right. What we doing for dinner? There. Sounds like a plan. All right. All right. Love you. Bye. It is 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, and Ben Troop. Glad you're making part of your day here in the final hour of the program. We are about a week and a half out from Georgia and Clemson. And joining us here on the program, former first-team All-SEC tight end Arthur Lynch joins us here on 3 and Out. Arthur, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you for having me again. It's good to be here.
Hey, appreciate you coming on. Obviously, Georgia played in a bunch of big games, but Georgia Clemson, this one's been hyped up for months and months. Coming around to this one, speak to getting a chance to play Clemson just over in South Carolina, and how big this game is going to be here in about 10 days.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to get the chance to play to a very, very similar game versus the same opponent. Although it wasn't on a neutral field, it was in I guess Death Valley, as they call it, or in Clemson. This was back in 2013. We ended up losing the game by 3, but it was kind of a shootout. It was a top 5 matchup. And I do think that games like this are the games that players really want to play college football for. It really elevates the sense of urgency from start to finish of the off season. You know, as soon as the season's over and they announce this game, usually it's announced like 2 years in advance, and because of the scheduling, intricacies that it takes. But ultimately, I remember when we knew we were playing Clemson in 2013, the entire offseason, we were preparing for what we knew was going to be a top 5 matchup. And I think, knowing anything about Kirby Smart, it seems like he relishes for these types of moments, and that's why he schedules the way that he does. And I think that, the Georgia Bulldogs and all the players there have been looking forward to this since the end of last year, and I think they're going to meet the challenge.
And I know some will say, "Hey, it's another game on the schedule. It's an opener. Yes, it's a big game, but it's just another game." Others will say, "Look, you're facing one of the modern day dynasties, a top 5 team, a team that's made 7 straight playoff trips." In your mind, is this a statement game for the Bulldogs?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a statement game because I think ultimately the Georgia Bulldogs of recent history have played in a number of big games and proven to belong in that conversation as one of the top teams in the country. Now, is it an important game? Absolutely, because in the modern day college football, those top 4 teams have really they've been pretty much interchangeable with one of 6 teams or 5 teams in the past 4 years, right? You're talking about Clemson, you're talking about Alabama, you're talking about Oklahoma, Ohio State, Georgia, and Notre Dame. I think those are the 6 teams that have really been consistently in the discussions to the top 4 and in the top 4. So, is the season over if Clemson loses? No. Is the season over if Georgia loses? No. But you also have to take things in consideration that, especially, Georgia doesn't have the same luxury as Clemson, as they have to play a full SEC schedule. They're going to play a lot of tough teams throughout the year. Whereas Clemson, let's be honest, the ACC schedule isn't what it is in comparison to the SEC. So, statement game, I wouldn't say it's that, but I do think the level of importance is heightened for Georgia, especially because the margin for error, if they don't come out victorious, is much smaller than that for versus a team like Clemson or Notre Dame or Oklahoma, who don't really necessarily have to play the same strength of schedule as an Alabama, as a Florida, as a Georgia, or any other team the SEC does.
And sticking with the margin of error. I mean, you being a big time tight end, a 4 or 5 star recruit coming out of Dartmouth, Mass. You look at a guy like Darnell Washington. I mean, I don't know if he grew up a Georgia fan, but I mean, he was supposed to be a big focal point of that offense. I mean, obviously he's having a foot injury and having the next man up. What does that do for the tight end room? Understanding that obviously he was going to be the guy that was going to be the starter, but obviously the next man up. Now, how much is that backup? And really the 2 backups got to be ready to go out there and play key roles in a big time game when they was not looked upon to have that big of a role come game 1.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think one kind of blessing in disguise for the tight end room at the University of Georgia this year is they have a lot of depth at that position. Probably more depth at that position than anywhere else along the offense, besides maybe offensive line. And I think the tight end room was set to have a big year because of some injuries, out on the edge to some of the wide receivers. you got guys like Fitzpatrick, who's played a lot of meaningful snaps, and in my opinion, he's a complete tight end who both catch the ball and block, and he's smart enough to play a number of different positions, whether it be the I, the F, the slot, or the Y, the F, or slot type role, which guys and Mike Bobo's offense had to do a lot of, and I think Monken has asked a lot of him and the other guys in that tight end room to do a lot of different things. So, to your point, yeah, Washington's a little bit of a freak in terms of his size and athletic ability. I don't think his season is over by any means. I just don't know if he'll be ready to go in 2 weeks. I think he's poised to have a very, very big year. I don't imagine him staying on campus very long. I imagine he's a 3-and-done type guy, assuming he stays healthy. So it always gives younger guys opportunities to excel early on when the guy who's the projected starter goes down with an injury. I know there's a freshman or a redshirt freshman who's supposedly pretty good, who could play multiple different positions. And again, I think Fitzpatrick will play a big game, will have a big game and have a big season just because of ultimately the stuff he's done previously and the stuff he'll continue to do this year. And I think he's got 2 years of eligibility left. So again, the tight end room, it's very deep, certainly deeper than any tight end room I was in. Mine is probably 1 year in 2011 when we had Orson, myself, Aaron, Bruce, and Jay. So we'll see where it goes. But I am not worried about the tight end room. I am kind of worried about who's going to step up on the outside in the wide receiver position. So we'll see how that goes.
Arthur, how do you look at the Georgia offense here in 2021? Obviously, JT Daniels just got in for 4 games last year, limited practice time because of COVID for the entire team, no spring last year. How much do you expect to see different from this Georgia team, and how much more explosive do you think they can be versus maybe what they were able to show in 2020?
Well, I think, the first person you mentioned there, JT Daniels, the game of football in 2021, whether it be in the college level or the NFL, if you've got a guy who can sling it, you got a guy under center who you can trust, you got a chance. And you got that in JT Daniels. I think that's huge, right? That's your starting point. That's the vocal point of the offense. He's had a lot of experience. People got to realize that he graduated high school a year early and started the true freshman at USC, which is the pinnacle of college quarterbacking for the past 25 years. So I think that's huge, right? So I think from an explosive standpoint, I don't necessarily think many things are going to change. I just think that the offense will be more in sync. They've had a full year under JT Daniels, a full offseason under JT Daniels. I think he is well respected amongst his peers, amongst his coaches as a leader. He obviously has the physical talent, and he's got the mental capability of doing a lot of things and doing a lot of things well. So ultimately, I think the offense is in good hands because of that. I think Monken probably trusts him more so than he probably did a year ago because he was coming off injury and he was, didn't really play half a year. So one thing I'm looking forward to is watching JT Daniels be able to command the huddle, command the offense, spread the ball around to his playmakers. We mentioned the tight ends, obviously the running backs. He's got a great offensive line. Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to young wide receivers making plays and kind of developing and kind of filling the void for the guys that have gotten hurt and not going to be able to play earlier on in the season. So I think JT Daniels is the guy, and he's going to do a very, very good job with that offense. But ultimately, it's only one man, right? It's only one quarterback. So he's going to need other guys to step up, and I think a lot of guys will.
A lot of preseason hype around Georgia, and understandably so, for good reason. What are your expectations for this team in 2021?
Cut out there.
A lot of hype around this team here in the summer. What are your expectations for this team in 2021?
Well, I think there's always a lot of hype around Georgia football. You know what I mean? I'm not naive. I don't think you guys are either. We've all kind of heard this song and dance before. Ultimately, a lot of things have to go right to have one of those special seasons, if you will. We've already had some injuries. That's going to be tough. That also gives younger guys and other people opportunities to prove themselves early on, which I think they will. My expectations for them is a very, very stout defense. I think if the offensive line plays the way they have played in the past, they got a very good chance to develop a very powerful running game with some explosive options. Ultimately, I think it comes down to quarterback play. And I think JT Daniels is a guy that has proven himself at 2 different schools. So I would imagine that the Georgia football team for 2021 has an opportunity to be in the discussion for a Final Four team. As we know, if you're in the Final Four team, you got a chance to win it all. But the SEC is such a volatile league. There's so much talent from top to bottom. So I think they just kind of have to take it one game at a time, which is why I didn't like using that idea of a statement game. If they approach game one as any other game, they go into a neutral field, they come out with a win, then it's on to a whole new season, which is week 2. I think ultimately they have the talent, they have the depth, and they have the leadership at the quarterback position and the defensive side of the ball to have a really special year. But as we all know, a lot of things got to go right. Guys got to stay healthy. But I think Kirby Smart has done a great job recruiting well and recruiting depth. And that's ultimately how you overcome injuries early on.
And all that. I mean, what is that process like? I mean, everybody wants to know, like, even if you root for Georgia, play against Georgia, it's only certain people get to say they graced the field. They was in those seats. What is it like playing at Georgia, understanding that the pressure doesn't go down, it only goes up year in and year out? Doesn't matter who the players are, doesn't matter who they're replacing at offensive defensive coordinator. What is that pressure like from practice to the game field? Understanding that, man, every single thing you do is being watched, being a close eye, and sometimes it's fair and unfair criticism that comes with that.
I mean, I think that's what makes it special. I think as a young athlete, as someone who wanted to play college football and professional football at a very high level, there's no other place that you'd want to be than in a school like University of Georgia and a league like the SEC, because ultimately the greatest players, the best players expect that pressure. They want that pressure. They thrive under that pressure. I think, that's one thing I loved about it. I loved every single day that we had to go to work, go to practice, compete with one another. Because ultimately, if you weren't competing with each other, how can you expect to compete against the biggest and the best, the SEC? And one thing that I always loved about University of Georgia and, playing at UGA and playing with, guys that I can still consider my brothers, is you don't just represent yourself and your family and your friends. You represent the University of Georgia, which ultimately means you represent the state of Georgia, which means so much more in the grand scheme of things. And people look up to you and look to you to represent the state and the university well. So ultimately, if you don't like that kind of pressure, you shouldn't come to a school like UGA. You certainly shouldn't be in the SEC. I know for me, it's something I hold near dear in my heart to this day, because ultimately, when you want to put yourself in a position to succeed, you want like-minded people around you. And, those are the types of people that go to UGA, and those are the types of people that choose the SEC. And I think it's a great thing. I think it's the best.
Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end, our guest here on 3 and Out. I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Go Dogs. Looking forward to talking to you guys again here soon.
Absolutely. Arthur Lynch joining us here on 3 and Out as Georgia and Clemson getting closer by the minute. We're down to about 10 days to go until kickoff between the Dogs and the Tigers. We've got more to come. We're not that far off from first pitch between Braves and the Yankees. Braves trying to get back in the win column against the Yankees after a tough one last night. We'll get to that and more. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live ESPNCoastal.com. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us. Braves and Yankees coming up tonight. Game 2 of that 2-game series. Braves are off Wednesday and Thursday. Rare back days off here for Atlanta. But tonight, trying to split the series, which, BJ, what we talked about is really what you hoped for when you came into this thing. I know people are like, oh, man, well, you weren't going to win from here to the end of time in Major League Baseball. You happened to lose last night. Bullpen kind of let it slip away from you a little bit. But, again, Huascar Ynoa, not bad. Tonight you try to go and take one, and if you come out of this thing 1-1 against the Yankees, so be it. You move on, and you're still in great shape here heading into the late stages of August.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, you weren't going to, win 85% of your games. Like you said, the Braves lost and it felt really weird. And that's a good thing that now when the Braves lose, it, feels kind of out of place. This team has been red hot. I think overall still the hottest team in baseball if you go back 3 weeks. And yeah, if you can split with the Yankees who have now won 10 games in a row, I think you absolutely take that and you move forward and you continue to have a multi-game lead in the division. And quite frankly, I feel good about tonight. Kev, and you mentioned Huascar Ynoa did a good job. He did a good job. And tonight you have Charlie Morton on the mound, who's 12-4 with a 3.47 ERA. I know some 1-year deals for Atlanta have not gone well in the past. You think about obviously Cole Hamels, but Charlie Morton, for a guy that's a veteran, has come in and looked like it, has played up to his potential, has looked like a multi-time All-Star. And 12-4 with a 3.47 ERA is what you want from a front end of the rotation starter. So I'm excited to see what Charlie can do against this lineup. I still think, Ben, with those big bats, and you saw it late last night, keep the ball down. Keep the ball down. If you leave a breaking ball hanging over the plate, it's going to go a long way. If you try to challenge these guys up in the strike zone, it might go a long way. Keep the ball down. And I think, you've seen great defensive work from the Braves. But, yeah, last night you played a good team and you lost. I mean, good grief. You won for about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks straight. So bounce back, split the series, get some momentum heading into a couple of off days, 2 off days, which must be nice for these guys. But, yeah, get the win tonight and split that series with New York.
It's amazing when you're going up against the evil empire, Kevin, how many people just be rooting for you. I don't know if they're rooting for the Braves or just rooting against the Yankees, but – the hottest team in the National League went up against the hottest team in the American League, maybe the best team in the American League, and they lost. If you lose it to the Yankees, I don't think too many people are gonna be mad at you. I mean, they always gonna have a good roster, they always gonna have a good pitching. But BJ, I think you said it best. They got some very, very dangerous hitters. If you give them anything over that plate, it's out of there. But the Braves are showing that they are human. Huascar Ynoa is still pitched well. Got out of a jam last night. That you lose. You're gonna. Baseball is who fails the least. Everybody's failing in baseball. The team that plays the best, the team that just failing at a little less than everybody else. But I like what the Braves have shown. For the Braves to be in this point, it's all about how you got here with everything that you had to deal with, and for them because they still. They lost to the Yankees. Ain't nobody trying to deal with them in the NL East right now. When you look at what they're doing, and the Braves seemingly are getting better. Sometimes you ain't gonna get the end result, and that's the win. That doesn't mean you're not making strides. And BJ, I ain't had a chance to see. Talk to Papa B in a minute. I don't know if he's liking these Braves or not liking these Braves right now. But Kevin, you got to feel good about what they're doing. You lost to the Yankees. Okay, but it's all about how you bounce back. The Braves haven't lost in a long time. I think the Yankees are going for like 11 and 12 straight, so they've been beating everybody, even the Braves. They just so it's not like they weren't playing against a very, very hot team. But yeah, I like the Braves' chances. I think they go out there and get back to what they do. Hey man, you got to match firepower with firepower. You ain't gonna get much better of a lineup than what you see with the Yankees. This Braves team, they can match with the best of them. But the Yankees are the barometer in the AL. Obviously, the Dodgers are the barometer in the NL. But I think if anybody can prove that the Yankees show they're human as well, I think this Braves team can do that.
Sure, and there's nothing worse than overreacting to one game in baseball. That's like the worst. So, BJ, I know you are the king of that, but it's true. Again, BJ was ready to after an 0-3 start.
No. Let's
years ago, you were like ready, done. You're done.
I'm only mad after one loss when it's the first loss, right? If you start out the season 0-1, you're done. I can't emotionally handle it. I can't handle 0-1. But I did want to ask you about AJ Minter, Kevin, because, got sent back down to Gwinnett and probably needed to, was not having a good stretch a few weeks back. And since he's come back up, he's looked pretty good. Had a couple of strikeouts last night, worked a clean innings, got that ERA down near 4, and it was much higher than that. I mean, are you seeing perhaps a new confidence for A.J. Minter that could benefit the Braves down the stretch?
Certainly. I think it's all also how you take that demotion, right? When you look at players who have been in the big leagues for a little bit and they say, hey, you're going back to the minors. Sometimes that's not taken in the best way. I think Jeff Francoeur famously had a spat where the Braves, he was really struggling. The Braves said, hey, go to AAA and figure it out. And he was hacked off about that. Like, he's like, I don't want to go. I'm a big league ball player. They're like, well, you're not right now. Go figure some things out. And I think, A.J. Minter, take that demotion in stride and say, look, wasn't pitching very well, wasn't getting guys out, wasn't effective. Go to Gwinnett, figure it out. And if you can, they'll bring you right back up. It's not that they lost faith in you. It's just one of those things like, look, go figure some of this stuff out so you can be an effective major league pitcher, what you're doing wrong, and come back. And Ben will probably agree with this. I don't know. I can't speak for football, but baseball, it's one of those things where when you lose confidence, the major leagues is a tough place to get it back. Like, go beat up on some guys in minor leagues and come back. I don't know how it works in the NFL, but if you lose that confidence in what you're doing, where do you go to get it back? I don't know, but losing that confidence in the major leagues, it's tough to get it back and just say, I'm going to snap out of it and go. It's easier to send them down and say, look, go figure it out. It's fine. And when you do, bring you back up here in the story.
Baseball is unique from that standpoint too, Kevin. It's the only place to where you can actually get called down to the minors and kind of get back to that confident level and get called back up. Football, there is you get called up, and that's it. There is no call down. But I think I don't think people understand that concept of confidence. When you are a professional athlete, your talent is secondary to your confidence level. My talent also kind of like, it's only shown through my confidence level, and that way you go from confident to talented to instinctual. You get out there on that field, I could just let my instincts take over. But like, the worst thing a receiver can do is drop a pass, especially if it's the first one, because you're like, you'll see a receiver do it. Oh, don't get to playing with me, because this is all I have. So yeah, I know it's unfortunate, but you good enough to make it to the majors. Even the best get called down. Hopefully he gets back right. Kevin gets called back up.
Yeah, and he's been there, and since he's come back, has done a tremendous job for the Braves out of that bullpen. Braves Yankees coming up just after the top of the hour with our coverage there. We've got more to come here 3 and Out on this Tuesday afternoon all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live audio, ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. Go to @ESPNCoastal there on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel, and you can, if you missed all the 3 and Out shows, Second Down, they're right there for your archive. If you miss our high school game of the week that our own PJ Zuko is doing each Friday night, you can go watch that there on our YouTube channel @ESPN Coastal. Get that notification or that subscription on, and you can get notified when we go live each and every day, and certainly on Fridays for high school football. We got 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. On a historic day, I guess, with the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 coming together for the alliance. I was reading all the comments from the commissioners and presidents. I get all in those emails, like the historic, and there's like you barely explained what it was. How's it historic? I know you have some scheduling things you want to do, and women's basketball, men's basketball, and some of the Olympic sports and things like that. But you barely kind of came out and outlined what it was. But you got that going on. Brave Yankees tonight. College football starts in 3 days? Really excited, or 4 days. Really excited about that coming up. Full week, and again, our last week without college football until January. So we have college football this week, so we'll have no more weeks, I should say, without college football until January. How about that?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And you talk about some big high school games coming up this weekend, obviously, which you guys will be a part of. And the Braves-Yankees series is fun. I know it's only a couple of games you lost last night, but it feels like postseason baseball. These are baseball games that matter. These are baseball games that everybody's tuning into. So split the series. I think Charlie Morton has been fantastic this year. I think he's going to do a great job tonight. Looking forward to that. But yes, more football on the horizon.
Looking forward to football. Let's go Bravos. Let's bring down the evil empire. You're doing it for more than just Brave Nation. You're doing it for all of everybody who roots against them pesky Yankees. Let's get that dub tonight.
Yeah, everybody has a mutual across baseball disdain for the Yankees. You're either a Yankees fan or you want them to lose every game. That's pretty much how it goes across Major League Baseball. We will have that for you coming up here in about 7 minutes or so. We'll have Braves and Yankees with game 2 of that 2-game series. Again, Braves off tomorrow and Thursday. Kind of a weird quirk in the baseball schedule where they get 2 off days here at this juncture in the season, but probably coming at a good time. You get 2 off days, get fresh, and just about 1 month to go in the regular season when they come back. So a great chance for the home push as well. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or YouTube page. We'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday edition of 3 and Out.